Today, we're diving into 10 absolutely amazing single-player games that I think every fan of the genre needs to experience, especially if you haven't played some of the ones on this list yet. And if that's the case, I'm honestly a little jealous because there are some games that make you wish you could wipe your memory and play them all over again. I'll be honest, I tried playing the original Mafia a long time ago, but unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I never finished it. Why fortunately? Well, it's simple. Back then, when I was playing a lot of games, I didn't fully appreciate them. You know that feeling when you rewatch an old movie or cartoon and start noticing more details and meaning? That's how it is with Mafia. The remake, which was released to let people rediscover the game, is honestly amazing. At least that's my take, since I never finished the original and really enjoyed the remake. Maybe people who played the original didn't like it as much, but hey, to each their own. The first Mafia is actually a brilliant and probably more mature crime story compared to something like GTA. It's about a guy who gets pulled into the criminal world not by choice, and now has to not only survive, but also prove he's a decent and honorable person. There are so many things to praise about the game. First off, the atmosphere. It's incredible. Not many games can capture the mood of Prohibition-era America, and the music played a huge part in that. I don't know about you, but before I played Mafia 2 and this remake, I wasn't really into old tracks, but after playing them, quite a few made their way into my playlist. I'm sure many of you can relate. Long story short, it's a fantastic remake of an already fantastic game. Not too long ago, just a couple of months back, I replayed the second part of Metro and changed my opinion on Metro 2033 for the better. Back in the day, when I first played it, I was too young to fully appreciate what made it special. But even though my view on 2033 improved, I still stand by what I thought a few years ago. Metro Exodus is the best game in the series. Don't get me wrong, the plot of the first two games is solid, but it doesn't hit the same. Sure, chasing mutants is fun, but it doesn't feel as grounded. What makes Metro Exodus special is that, at its core, it's a simple yet heartfelt story. It's not about Artyom and his friends trying to save the world or anything grand like that. They're just looking for a safe place to call home, a place where they can start families and live in peace. To do that, they leave Moscow and embark on a journey across Russia, and every location they visit sticks with you. Each one feels memorable, leaving a lasting impression. A big part of what pulls you into the game is the conversations you hear while riding the train. In most other games, you might skip dialogues because they're not always well written or engaging, but not in Metro Exodus. Here, you actually want to approach every character, hear their story, get their thoughts on what's happening, or just sit with someone for a bit. There are very few games where the dialogue alone can draw you in like this. And beyond that, Metro Exodus brings Artyom's story to a fitting end. In my opinion, the game delivers a sad but perfect conclusion, at least if you get the good ending. It's one of the most heartfelt and atmospheric games I've ever played, and I highly recommend it to everyone. If you're into epic adventures like Metro Exodus set in Russia, you'll want to check out Rise of the Tomb Raider as well. The game takes place deep in Siberia, and here's something pretty wild. This game came out way back in 2015 and even on the Xbox 360. Yep, that old console. It's crazy to think that it'll be almost 10 years old soon, yet it still looks stunning today. Honestly, I have no idea how the developers managed to pull off those graphics on hardware that was already considered outdated back then. As for the game itself, Rise of the Tomb Raider delivers exactly what you'd expect from a Lara Croft adventure, kind of like what you'd get in an Uncharted game. It's a perfect blend of fast-paced, epic gameplay with a story that's solid and keeps you interested. I won't spoil anything, but the setup is pretty straightforward. Lara's off on another adventure, this time up against a corporation with similar goals. The game takes that ideal Uncharted formula and adds a semi-open world where you can explore, discover tombs, and level up Lara. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones-style adventures, trust me, you don't want to miss out on Rise of the Tomb Raider. Next up is Days Gone, a game that honestly hits a bit close to home for me. It's kind of a shame because this is one of those games that probably won't ever get the sequel it truly deserves. Sony wasn't too thrilled with its sales, which is likely why, but funny enough, players themselves either enjoyed it or absolutely loved it. Days Gone tells a pretty straightforward but captivating story set in a zombie apocalypse with a bit of a twist. You play as a biker, and as you'd expect, your bike is your main mode of transport throughout the game. It's not just for show either. Your bike is crucial and will save you more times than you can count. Besides, exploring the vast open world on foot would take ages. The world itself might seem kind of standard at first, but it's far from boring. You'll come across outposts with raiders you can clear out to make the roads safer, which adds a bit of strategy. There are also small camps where you can complete jobs to earn points that you can use to upgrade your bike or get new weapons. But for me, the real standout feature is the hordes of zombies. And I mean hordes. Sure, you could always run or ride off on your bike, but where's the fun in that? It's way more satisfying to plan out your strategy, manage your ammo, and find escape routes than take down hundreds of infected on your own. It might sound crazy to some, but after I finished the main story and side activities, I spent a few extra days just messing with the hordes because honestly, it was exciting to see what I could pull off. It's still disappointing to think we'll probably never get a sequel to this solid game. Not all games face such a rough fate. Take the incredibly unique Death Stranding, for example. The second part is already set to release next year. But while we wait for that, let's talk about the first game, which many people unironically call a true courier simulator. In this game, the world has once again come to an end, but in a very unusual way. Not really a surprise, considering Hideo Kojima is at the helm. You play as the main character, who is portrayed and voiced by Norman Reedus. Your main objective? Yep, delivering various cargo from point A to point B. And here's where the core mechanic of the game shines. It's not just about stacking the cargo on your character. You have to place it very carefully, considering weight and balance. If you don't plan this out properly, you'll end up stumbling over the first rock or bump and lose everything. And trust me, it's extra frustrating when this happens in the middle of a river. By the way, your route plays a key role as well. Usually you've got three choices: fast but dangerously risky, super safe but painfully slow, or you can try to find a good balance between the two. And of course, the most important part of the game is its story. It's hard to sum it up in just a few words because at first it's very strange and confusing, but as the game progresses, it unfolds in an absolutely brilliant way. I won't spoil anything so you can experience it fully for yourself. If you played Doom 2016 and enjoyed it, then there's no reason to miss out on its amazing sequel, Doom Eternal. The gameplay is even more intense, making it one of the most thrilling experiences you can have. It sticks to the winning formula of the 2016 game, but improves on it in key areas, especially when it comes to the gunfights and demon slaying, as well as the movement mechanics. Moving at breakneck speeds, never standing still, and getting into the perfect flow is pure satisfaction. And like I mentioned before, the music plays a huge part in that experience. Sorry for repeating myself, but Mick Gordon's soundtrack is just phenomenal. His music cranks up the immersion to a whole new level. Few shooters that focus on non-stop carnage make you want to annihilate demons as much as Doom does. On top of that, the game has a more fleshed out storyline. Yeah, there was a story before, I know, but now it digs deeper into the lore, and surprisingly, you even get some answers about who Doom Guy or Doom Slayer really is. When you first play Assassin's Creed Unity, it comes across as a very ambitious game that unfortunately became a victim of its terrible technical issues and the bugs it was riddled with at launch. Beneath that rough release, though, there was a true gem in the Assassin's Creed series, with an atmospheric story, cutting-edge graphics, and impressive crowd technology. This November marks the game's 10th anniversary, but when you look at gameplay footage, you'd never guess it came out in 2014. It still looks absolutely stunning, especially when it comes to the detail of Paris and the massive crowds. Ubisoft often gets a lot of criticism these days. For example, people were upset when they decided to include a black samurai in feudal Japan. I'm not one to defend them on everything, but I can't help but praise how well they used to capture the atmosphere of different historical periods. Ever since Assassin's Creed 2, I found myself unexpectedly enjoying learning a bit of history. In terms of that aspect, Unity does a fantastic job of showcasing Paris and the Revolution, which is presented in a really epic way. On top of all that, the parkour in Unity is amazing. It was decent before, but a bit clunky in places. In Unity, it feels like they really perfected it. How smoothly your character moves through the environment is now up to you and your skills. And yes, I haven't even touched on the story because I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll just say that in my opinion, the story is on par with the legendary Assassin's Creed 2, though maybe just a notch below it. There have been quite a few games set in the Star Wars universe, but when it comes to story-driven ones, The list isn't that long. Every fan of this massive franchise has their personal favorite, and while I might get some pushback in the comments, for me, the best one in terms of story has to be Fallen Order. The game takes place after Episode 3, one of the most pivotal moments in the Star Wars saga. After the Empire declared the Jedi enemies of the state and started hunting them down, those who survived had two choices, either hide or fight back. You'll play as one of those survivors, a young guy named Cal Kestis, who gets caught up in the ongoing battle between the rebels and the Empire. Throughout the game, you'll be up against the Empire, traveling to different worlds and exploring planets that each have their own unique environments and creatures. The game has a few elements that might remind you of Miyazaki's titles, like the bonfire where you can rest and regain health, but overall, it's not too difficult, and you can get through it pretty easily. Plus, you don't need to be a huge Star Wars fan or know a ton about the universe to enjoy the game. It's still an engaging experience that can really pull you in. God of War 2018 is a game I played without having any prior knowledge of the series, but even so, I had an amazing experience. In fact, this game was the reason I eventually wanted to get a console and dive into Kratos' Greek backstory. And honestly, I have zero regrets about that. God of War 2018 tells the story of an older but still insanely tough Spartan warrior who's left the endless bloodshed of Greek gods behind to settle down and start a family. The game focuses a lot on the classic father and son dynamic, which, let's be real, is something a lot of people love both in movies and games. So this time around, Kratos won't be taking down gods, now Norse ones, alone. He's got his son Atreus by his side. Kratos's main challenge isn't just wiping out everything in his path like he's always done, but also learning how to be a dad, which isn't exactly his strong suit. Much like in The Last of Us, which I've mentioned before, you'll be watching the relationship between these two characters develop throughout the game. Some argue that this entry in the series is less brutal and more story-driven, and see that as a downside. But honestly, I'm one of those people who enjoyed both the brutal combat of the Greek era and the more narrative-driven approach in the Norse setting. You can't talk about great single-player games without mentioning The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. It's the epic story of Geralt of Rivia, also known as The Witcher. I'll be honest, I'm one of those people who hadn't read the Witcher books when I first played the game, and I jumped into the third installment without having played the first two. But despite that, it didn't stop me from enjoying and getting absorbed in the incredible story of Geralt's search for Ciri, while also somehow ending up playing Gwent with almost every character you meet along the way. Funny enough, the first time I played Witcher 3, I didn't really understand the Gwent minigame and skipped it. That was probably my biggest mistake. On my second playthrough, I learned the rules, and after that, I couldn't stop playing it. But The Witcher 3 isn't just about Gwent. Its open world is one of the best, filled with dangers and exciting things to discover. Few open world games manage to fully immerse the player in a way that makes you want to explore every corner, rather than just completing random objectives or clearing out enemy camps. But CD Projekt Red nailed it with this game. Every quest or random encounter feels like it could turn into a fully fleshed out story with unique outcomes. The side quests in The Witcher 3 are just as good as the main storyline, which is rare in a lot of games. You can easily sink over 100 hours into this game, and every minute of it will be time well spent. If, for some reason, you've missed out on playing The Witcher 3, you've missed out on a real gem in the world of video games.